So Heather, tell me a little bit about yourself as a coach.
Well, I mainly coach women in the age range of like 30s to 50s, and they're usually the kind who are refusing to buy into this is this aging bullshit kind of thing. They're tired of feeling tired, they're tired of feeling fat, they're tired of feeling unhappy, and they're really wanting energy and they're wanting confidence and motivation so they can be healthy and strong and love the way they look and feel for the long term. And I do this through coaching programs. So I have online programs, but then there's an element of coaching involved. And the most important thing for me when I'm working with clients is that no one ever feels judged for where they are, and they don't feel judged for the obstacles that they've had in the past or whatever they're dealing with right now. And to know that being human is really hard. It's like the hardest thing I've ever had to do. So we are just all trying to do our best. And if we could do more, we'd be doing more. So,
So how did you end up working with this group of women? Like, tell me your backstory leading into coaching.
well, before coaching, so I started as a personal trainer when I was in my early 20s, and um, I chose fitness because fitness was always something for me that I never questioned my ability on. And the reason I never questioned my ability on it was because I had had heart surgery when I was a kid. And after the surgery, the surgeon said to me, "You can do anything you want now. If you want to run a marathon, you can run a marathon." And it was so weird how I was so impressionable right then and there that I never questioned my ability. I wish I had that kind of confidence in like all other areas of my life, but I don't. It's just with fitness. So that's how I got into personal training. And then along the way, what I realized was the obstacle that I was faced with was that people didn't do the homework. They didn't follow the meal plan. They weren't consistent with their home workouts. And they didn't know why they weren't, but neither did I. And I didn't even know how to figure that part out or help them figure that part out. So it became this unfulfilling role for me because I had this intention of helping them find this freedom in terms of their physical being so that they never have to feel limited in an activity. They never had to feel left out. They never had to feel guilty that they weren't healthy enough because they couldn't keep up with their kids or whatever they were trying to do. And I was looking for how do I help? And one of my clients actually told me about a life coaching program, which of course became CTI, which I went through. And so I thought, yeah, let's do it. So I took the first course, and the first half of the first course, I was like, this is too woo woo. It's not my thing, and I almost left, but I stuck it out. And I'm so glad I did because then I decided I wanted to go through the whole year and get my certification, and then from there I figured out how do I weave this in. So it changed my whole approach to how I looked at personal training and the questions that I asked people, and it made such a significant difference in my clients becoming consistent. And after I went through coaching and changed my approach, they were pretty much 90% committed and consistent with the goals that they had set for themselves. And that was amazing.
That sounds, I think that it really goes to show the power of coaching, right? In that you have the same modality of you've got the personal training, you've got the clients, and it just shows that when you add these tools to any other skill set, you can create real change in people's lives. They don't hire a personal trainer because they want to stay the same. They hire a personal trainer because they're ready for the change. But through coaching, it sounds like you're really able to help them enter into those mindset shifts they need to create the body shifts. Is that right?
Yeah, I think a lot of people, in my experience, people just think that it's so much about willpower And it's really got nothing to do with willpower. It's really learning how to look inside and figure out where you're stopping yourself and recognizing that it is within you. Um, and it's such a great tool when I just approach things from that perspective of values, like what's really important to you and what are you willing to do and what are you not willing to do. And I think fitness and nutrition, unfortunately, people think that it has to be this big thing, that it has to be all or nothing. I see that mentality come in through coaching all the time. Like, if I can't do all of it, I'm not going to do any of it, which is interesting because if you look at other areas of your life, that's not how we really approach many things. We recognize that we have to take steps one by one. You know, how did you get to where you are now? Like, how did you become, you know, whatever career role you have? Well, you probably had to go to school for it. Well, did you rush through that? Did you give it 100% all the time? Probably not. But what you knew is that you needed to take one step. You knew it was going to take a long time. It's going to take 4, 6, 8 years. Who knows how long you need to go to school for it? But you're prepared for that. And same with a house. When you buy a house, you're not going to have that thing paid off in a year. You know that it's going to be for the long haul. And with fitness and nutrition, people are addicted to these quick fixes. So it's great to just sort of have them look at how they approach things in a wise and reasonable way and really take a look at how do you use wise and reasonable within the context of trying to work on your health, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. In life, everything is a trade-off, right? In that you are not going to overhaul your relationships, your fitness, your job, your social life, all of those things at once. You have to pick and choose. And even in any of those individual boxes, there's steps to be taken along the way to make that progress, right? So in your
Yeah.
in your journey as a coach, what were some of the other steps that you took along that way? Yeah.
Um, well, there was a period of time where, so I had lost my first husband, and that was sort of as I think I had already finished my certification as a coach. Um, and I, it just really changed the course of my life in that at that time, and it shifted everything. And so I ended up having a binge eating issue for a while, and I became very obsessive about exercise. And I couldn't figure out how to get through the grief. And the coaching, like I had a coach, I also had a friend who went through, she took another modality of coaching called EFT, Emotional Freedom Technique. And again, it was one of those things where I was like, oh God, like seriously, seriously, we're going to tap on our face and that's going to like work like magic. But at this point, I was sort of desperate. I couldn't figure out how to just get on with my life. And so I allowed my coach to, teach me this EFT thing, and it was so impactful that I decided I need to teach this to my clients. So I got certified in that, and it did wonders for anxiety. And it was really a great tool to add to my coaching toolbox because it was something my clients could do at home once they understood how it worked and how to use it properly. So that was a big one that I added. And then I also ended up adding, so how I change things through my coaching now is that I ended up doing a deeper dive into science in terms of the body, the internal workings of the body, because what had happened was I was coaching people on fitness goals and using the tools that I had known to work for myself and also things that had been really proven to work for other people. But I ended up in a roadblock and I was struggling to reach my fitness goals, even though I thought, well, no, this is the way I'm supposed to do it. And I had to figure out, well, if it's not working for me and I know it's not working for other people, then what do I need to do? So I had to learn a different route when it came to nutrition, actually. And then I had to learn a different route in terms of what was actually happening in the systems of the body, like the science of how the human body is designed, to really understand why people had certain obstacles that they couldn't figure out how to get through.
So let's start with EFT tapping. This is something that we talked about before, and I've been on the edge of my seat waiting to learn because I've been hearing about it from different sources. I know people that have done it. I a little bit understand what's going on, but can you just give me a couple minute explanation of like what is EFT tapping and how does it work? What would it look like if I wanted to try it today?
Okay. So, my explanation is only going to come from what I sort of, how I look at it now. I forgot the technical, how they explained it in the past, but basically, if anyone's ever done EMDR, it's another type of psychology tool where they give you, you can do eye movement, or for me, when I went through EMDR, they gave me these electronic things that I held on to, and they would pulse from one side, one hand to the other, and it would alternate. And so what that does is, because the left brain controls the right side and the right brain controls the left side, when you get stuck in your head and you're stuck in an emotion, or you're paralyzed just because you don't know what next step to take, what happens is, when you have this sensation, or like with tapping, when you start tapping on certain areas, it's almost like proprioception for the muscle. It just alerts, like messages go to that part that you're tapping on, which then distracts from where you were in your brain, if that makes sense. So if you're hanging out, I like to look at my brain as like a big floor with a hallway and lots of different rooms in it. So if I'm stuck in this confusion room, it's like someone's knocking on a different door in that area. They're knocking on the door of, let's say, creativity, because I'm tapping over here, let's say. And then I'm out of that space. It's just distracted me from this space. And what's really cool is that when you have that distraction, it also allows you to calm down. So it's been proven to really help with anxiety and calm, like deep breathing is a way to do it too, right? So it allows your brain to sort of calm down and move to a different area. And then once you've distracted yourself over here, you're calm enough and you switch how your brain works so that you can then figure out a way out or past whatever it was that was blocking you. Does that make sense?
That absolutely does make sense. Can you just give a couple more examples of like if I were going to do EFT tapping, what are some of the places I would tap and why?
Yeah, so um, the tapping points are basically, you can start, I don't think it really matters where you start, but on your karate chop. So if you're gonna, break wood or bricks or something, you tap on your karate chop. And then you tap just under the armpit area, and then around the head. And then I like to just tell women, it's like, oh, right by your 11s, because we like brown and we get our 11s. So tap right there. And then on your crow's foot, so the side of the eye. Yeah. And then right underneath the eye on the eye bone there. And then right where a mustache would be, so between your nose and your lips. And then where a goatee would be. And then the other spot is sort of where your collarbone is, just on the meaty part underneath the collarbone. So for women, it's sort of part way, well, and for dudes, it's part way between the shoulder and the sternum, basically there. And so that's it. And when you tap, you're really just tapping enough to feel it. Um, at, I think you can play with it. You don't have to go too hard, but each person can sort of decide how much pressure they want to give. And the first thing you learn in tapping is, without saying anything, you just start tapping on the areas. Now, some people count, they're like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they move along. I don't think there's any magic number like, oh, you have to tap 3 times here, you have to tap 7. Like, it's just, don't worry about it. Just go through the motions and just do the sequence, and it just has a calming effect. So it's the first thing. And then what we do as coaches is we take a problem. We usually start with a statement that says, even though I'm frustrated right now, even though I'm frustrated, I accept that that's how I feel. And I'm still a really good person, even though I'm frustrated. So the key with that is to acknowledge, because we learn this. We're like, well, acknowledge where you are and accept it and move on. But it's not that simple. It's not just that simple in your head to say, okay, I'm pissed off. I accept that I'm pissed off and I go for it. That's not enough because you're still pissed off, even though you haven't really sat with it. And so when you tap and you do it, you really can allow yourself to be present with the fact that that's how you feel and acknowledge that it's okay and that you are still a really good person, even though you feel this way. And by taking the time to do it that way, it calms you down and it allows you to go forward, even though you're feeling how you're feeling. So that's a super simple way of doing it, is especially with anxiety. Even though I'm anxious right now, I accept that I'm anxious and I'm still a really good person even though I'm anxious. And then sometimes you can ask yourself, how can I move forward with the things I want to move forward with today, even though I feel this way, or while I feel this way, something like that. So very powerful, very easy to learn, and my clients do it. They do it when I'm not around, which I love, and it helps them. So, and I still use it too. So it's a very, very powerful tool.
That's incredible. I feel like for me as a coach, I'm always trying to give my clients the things that they can take away. Like my goal is for them to be able to fire me. Like I want you to build out your toolbox so much and so well that you just simply don't need me anymore, right? So the fact that your clients are able to take that, put it in their pocket and use it, I'm putting it in mine. I'm going to come back to that, and I really appreciate that. I, as a person, just like everyone else, struggle with moments of stress, moments of anxiety. And it's like, I believe heavily in pattern interruption, in that I don't need to stop myself from feeling what I'm feeling. It's that I need to have, instead of cycling, I need to have a pattern interruption of, hey, my behavior is going here because of these emotions. What can we do to accept these emotions to move on from this pattern? And that's a tool for exactly that.
Yeah, it's a good term you use, pattern interruption. And it reminds me of when I was struggling with the grief. I think the problem a lot of people have with grief is that you're trying to move through the grief. You can't move through the grief needs to move through you. And the more I tried to get my life back together and carry on and go forward, the more stressed and anxious I became and unhappy I became, because I had this expectation that I should be. And this is another problem with the stages of grief. Like, okay, like, not that there isn't a place for it, but I think it gets misconstrued. So you feel what you feel whenever you feel it. It's different for everybody. And the tapping is what really allowed me to make peace with what I was feeling, even though I really wanted to recover faster and get back to my career and all these other things. The tapping was what almost allowed me to do it faster because I accepted it and I actually really accepted it. And it was a faster than if I kept trying to push through it.
Yeah, I love the way that you say that. And the stages of grief, you're like, it's a framework and it's a great idea. But if you're sitting there going, okay, I'm going to feel this and then I'm going to feel this and then I will be, that isn't how it works. Yeah, the tools for acceptance just really help you accept, help you move on. And what a powerful story. So earlier you mentioned, and I love the way that you put this because you were talking about fitness goals and the ability to go inward, to go forward. And in coaching so much, it's more of like the philosophical internalization of like, hey, what's going on here on the internal? but can you tell me your story of a different way of physically going in that allowed you to gain the results that you needed?
Yeah, so that was fascinating actually. I had heard about food sensitivities and gut health and whatever, and I wasn't buying into it. Like many things, I've resisted. It became right. I mean, it's where you resist is generally where, in my experience now, anytime I resist something, I know that I'm going to end up coming back to it. That's just if there's something that's in my way and I'm like, I'm not going there, I'm pretty sure that I will end up going there. So, um, what had happened was I was doing all the right things, and so as you as for women, and I'm sure men must have their own version of this in a different sort of way, but for women, as I was saying, like around sort of mid 30s, it can start where we, or 40s, but where you start to wonder if what's happening to you is hormone changes. And you don't want to buy into like you know that it can happen, but I think what happens is we get scared because all we hear is that it's not good and you're going to gain weight and you're going to have these hot flashes and it's like a terrible experience, right? And women start to pay attention and we start to notice things. We're like, oh my God, I'm getting this tire tube around my midsection and I'm gaining fat here and I'm so tired all the time and I'm irritable. And we get scared that when we feel these things that this is because of aging. And I was starting to notice, and I was thinking, see, I had this belief that no, I'm going to get through this no problem. I eat healthy, I'm fit, like it'll be easier for me. And I do believe that the healthier you are, the easier time that you can possibly have as your body ages. It just makes sense to me. But I was starting to feel really, I had zero energy for my workouts. And I understood that stress played a big role into how I was feeling. And so I did a lot of self-care work. I would go for lots of walks and I would listen to audiobooks and work on my breathing and my tapping and all those things. But it happened to occur a couple more times. And this last time it went on for a long period of time where I had back pain and I had that loss of energy going for longer than a month. And I also wasn't cognitively really excelling the way I wanted to. So I felt like I was starting to forget things and I wasn't as happy as I wanted to be. And despite using my coaching tools, like, okay, maybe I'm just not fulfilled right now. Maybe I need something to look forward to and try and align with my inner being, like all those things that we learn. Despite trying those things and trying to focus on them, nothing was really working. And, I went and had my blood work done and everything was normal. And I thought, this is not normal. And if this is aging, honestly, I'm out. I do not want to keep going. And I started to look again for more because I'd done so much research on what is going on. And I wondered, okay, this maybe I am about that age. Maybe this is what's happening. But I ended up finding this course through a friend, and it was written by some personal trainers, some neuroscience people, and some other holistic nutrition people. And it was really all for health professionals who were experiencing like we don't know what to do with our clients, like we don't know what to do for ourselves because everything we've learned is not working. And it was an amazing place for me to be in because I thought, oh my God, okay, there is hope. It's not just me. So I started to understand that when you're doing all the things on the outside and nothing seems to be working, there's only one place left to look, and it's on the inside. And so I gave it a shot. And as I learned that there's basically, if you think about outer space, like outer space is huge, right? I don't know how many galaxies there are. Like, I'm not like a space nut, but I know there's like a shit ton going on out there that nobody knows with lots of light years. And it's a constant discovery. And what I learned was that's the same thing that's happening on the inside of your body. And it's funny because I think I always took for granted the inside of my body and never really gave it much thought at all. Like it's working, it's doing what it's supposed to do, not realizing that there's colonies of living things inside your body. Like the reason you're alive is because all the things on the inside are alive. Like you would not be here if it wasn't for the inner workings of your body. And so I was like, oh, okay, I'm not really honoring whatever these little things need. So on the inside, we're made up of all these microorganisms. Like I said, they're like colonies of like little workers, and they all have jobs. And the only way they can do their jobs is by the food that we give them. So the first thing is if we're not giving them good enough food, they're already at a disadvantage. They're already working at like if you think about if you work in a factory and as a human you haven't eaten and you're not doing your job well enough. That's what's happening on the inside. So these microorganisms that are supposed to help your liver function and your bowels function and even your brain function, they're not getting what they need. And I didn't want to buy into, well, our food quality sucks, but you know what? It kind of does. And we get our food sprayed with things that are in allowable limits. And what I found so interesting when I thought about all these allowable limits, there are way too many allowable limits. And when you stack one allowable limit and then you put another one on top and then another one, like at some point, this cannot be healthy. So the more I learned and realized that I used to be a believer that oh, I'll just get all my nutrition from my food. But then as I learned about our soil quality and what people spray for allowable limits and actually looked at it and then looked on the government websites and realized this is a thing. This is not fake. Here's the allowable limits that I'm looking at right now. Here's what's in the soil. It became real to me. And then I was tracking my food again because I was really curious about my nutrients. Also learning that, oh my God, I'm eating really healthy, but I'm not even getting all the vitamins that I need according to the food tracking that I'm doing. So that was an eye opener. And I thought, okay, I guess now I'm going to be open to supplements. So that's the first thing I started doing was realizing I need to feed my colonies better food so they can work better for me. And as I started doing that, I did notice changes in my energy levels and in my brain function. And I think one of the biggest things when it came to brain function that I didn't understand was that if we look at neurotransmitters, so like our GABA and our serotonin and our dopamine and all these things that are supposed to help us keep us calm and keep us happy and keep us motivated, these things actually start in the gut and they make their way up to the brain. I didn't know. I thought these things were all brain chemicals. Well, they are, but they don't start in the brain. They start in the gut. And so if your gut isn't healthy because you haven't been able to give it the right things, and that's just one piece of the puzzle. There's other things like when you're born, you might not even be born with the best makeup of your microbiome. But if there's some inflammation that happens, and this is the other thing I didn't understand, people would always be talking about inflammatory foods and inflammatory gut. I'm like, what does that even mean? It just means that it's like a little allergy, there's something that your body doesn't like, but we as humans don't pay attention to that. We don't realize that, okay, if you're burping a lot after you've eaten, or you have stomach pain, or you have like acid reflux, or you get bloated, or your stool isn't great, these are actually all signs that something's up. It's not supposed to be that normal to have digestive issues. And that's just one thing. I didn't even think I had digestive issues, but I went through the program and did home tests and realized, oh, I actually do have digestive issues. So, anyway, the inflammation, if there's this layer, it's kind of like road construction for these neurotransmitters, right? So your neurotransmitters are in your gut and they're trying to make their way up to your brain, but there's road construction. They can't get through. Maybe some of them get through, but not everybody gets through. So this goes back to another reason in coaching when you have a client and you're coaching them through, and even as coaches, we try and coach ourselves, right? We think, okay, I know what to do. And you go through the coaching process of asking yourself these powerful questions to move through whatever obstacle you have with your motivation. And your client or yourself keeps coming back to the same obstacle. It might be just because the brain actually doesn't have what it needs to function properly. And it was mind blowing for me to realize that giving a pill, taking an antidepressant isn't necessarily going to help the situation there. So what we need to do is clean up and heal the gut to allow the rest of the body to function properly. So it's been a really interesting process. And I've noticed such a change in my energy levels. They've returned. Honestly, some days it feels like I'm taking Coke all day because I feel so energized. And I'm so grateful because I honestly thought, Sean, that again, this aging? Is this how things are going to feel for me? And if this is the case, I don't want to do it. And it's been quite a while that I've been doing this protocol that now I teach my clients how to do. And it's night and day for me, and it's night and day for them. A lot of them have lost the weight they've been wanting to lose. They are having better productivity at work, more joy in their life. So I didn't want to buy into it, but now I do. And it's just, it's a fascinating topic. And again, it's like outer space, it's never ending discoveries. And I'm still keeping on top of as much research as is going on in terms of gut health, but it's huge and it's not to be ignored. And I think that more and more people are bringing up that topic, and more people are turning away from wanting to go to the doctor or have these, scopes for things and all these tests and do these surgeries or whatever needs doing, because you don't want to be at the mercy of a system that's broken. And I want to advocate for myself and I want to be as healthy as I can. And if modern medicine needs to treat me for something, then that's fine. But I don't want to be on a waiting list for 2 years to have a scope or have this or have that. When I'm realizing now that I just need to change my system. And again, I'm not saying that there isn't a place for Western or modern medicine. There absolutely is. But I feel like we're relying on a system to help us because we don't actually know how to help ourselves. And I think that this is a big thing, is fixing what's going on inside the body so it can thrive, and then we can rely on that system less.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much going on the internal, and my own story of a similar journey. I had really bad digestive issues for the majority of my life. And around age 24, I was like, all right, I know some of my major trigger foods. I quit drinking alcohol. I cut out red meat, pork, other things I knew were really messing me up. So it was like, okay, I've done the work. Digestive issues are settled. I think I'm fine now. And continued on that way for another couple of years. Age 27, I was in bodybuilding and I was in a bulk cycle doing hypertrophy training, which is what you're supposed to do to raise your testosterone. And I had terrible sleep and moodiness and low sex drive and all the other signs. And it's like, I'm 27. I shouldn't be dealing with these things until age 65, especially while bodybuilding. I got my blood tested, I got my T. I had low T at 27. And Western medicine, my doctor told me, oh, we'll just put you on TRT, which is, for people who don't know, testosterone replacement therapy, which makes it so your body no longer produces testosterone at all. And for people that need it, that's totally okay. Do what you need to do. But at 27, that should not have been the first line. That should not have been the go-to. So I'm fortunate that I went on a similar journey of, okay, I've already been eating better, but clearly there's other internal changes that needed to be made. And I went into looking into the vitamins that I was missing. My diet made me very specifically like zinc and magnesium deficient. And those are two of the ones that you really need for your hormones, amongst many others. And looking at allowable limits and the types of chemicals that were being put into my body from soaps and plastic, especially like black plastic. If you don't know about that, Google it, it's awful. And everything else just in a typical American Western household. And the things in processed foods, I was eating the healthy marketed processed foods, and they're all garbage. They all have chemicals that mess with your hormones. So it took me a couple of years to reverse that and to get my tea back to normal, but it all came from having this recognition of just because things are marketed as healthy does not mean that it's healthy. And just because you're eating well does not mean that you're eating right. And some of that is actually pretty individualized in that what you eat compared to what your clients eat is probably different too. And there are some universal truths that all apply, but everybody's body chemistry, everybody's biome is just a little bit different. Is that right?
Yeah, actually. So from all the research I've done, what I know is you can compare gut microbiomes of people all over the world, and they're largely going to be mostly all different. There is apparently one bacteria that does show up in, I think, a lot of humans that they tested all over the world, but mostly there's different levels of different things. So which is really interesting. Which is why sometimes when people move from one country to the next, and now they're having new foods, their gut microbiome is adjusted to the foods that they were eating before. So that might mean they end up, if they're having new bacteria in their body, it's like when you travel, right? Like if I'm traveling to Asia, right, there's a chance that my stomach might not really love what I'm eating over there. Now I'll go home and that'll be temporary. But um, anyway, back to your question. Yeah, everyone's is a bit different, and you're born with what they believe is like a certain ratio of certain things, but it also depends on being, were you a breastfed child, and how were you born? Were you a C-section kid, or did you come out of the canal? All these things matter. How sick were you as a child? Did you go on antibiotics when you were a child? And the interesting thing about the antibiotics is that what they're finding is now antibiotics, they're created in such a way that they cover a wide range of issues. But the problem is when you take certain antibiotics, it wipes out a lot of your gut microbiome. It kills everything. It kills, and I don't want to label things as good or bad. I want them to be fairly neutral playing field. But on the inside of your gut microbiome, there's bacteria, there's parasites, there's fungus, there's a whole bunch of things. And they only become a problem when maybe there's too much of one, then that's when you can get symptoms of things. And when you don't have enough of another, that's when maybe things don't function as well. Maybe the liver doesn't get what it needs because it doesn't have enough of this one bacteria to shuttle something to it. So, whatever is in there, generally, they can all cohabitate together, but you want to keep it under control, if that makes sense. So, when it comes to antibiotic, it's going to take everything out. But then how do you replace that stuff? So if you're a kid and you have antibiotics, then your gut microbiome, which starting off is really healthy, is now gone. So they've made some correlations. I can't exactly remember what they were between certain illnesses and kids having a lot of antibiotics. And of course, this ends up carrying into adulthood too, where you might end up with more problems because now you have a dysbiosis. So just you have this disconnection between what's in there and do you have enough of one thing? Do you not have enough of another? So, but you're not going to know that, right? Because how it's going to show up is maybe a skin issue or a rash or, a constant like earache, or it's very strange. I know people who've had ear problems. One person had actually gone deaf, but then they saw somebody who, it was a dentist who happened to be up on fungus in the mouth and was like, you have a fungus in the mouth. And so took antibiotics for this particular fungus. The hearing returned. But here, other people thought, no, this is a hearing issue and it's you have a hearing loss and it's never going to come back. Not the case. It can be because of the gut issues. Your microbiome actually can extend up into your mouth, right? So you get different parasites and different funguses and different bacteria all living along your entire GI tract up into your mouth. So it's quite fascinating to understand that certain symptoms that people can't seem to explain, well, maybe that's because it's actually a gut bacteria parasite issue. So, but if you know that, then you can learn the steps to take it, or find somebody who excels in that and get the right bacteria and sort things out. It's really fascinating.
Yeah, I think that it's interesting that you bring up traveling as well. Like, as being a globalized citizen, I move countries every couple months, sometimes every couple weeks. Even just moving from the north of one country to a south of another, my gut has to readjust, and I have to go out and seek out these like natural probiotics and natural ways to get the good localized bacteria into my gut to get things sorted out. So, with this gut health and with these things in mind, how do you help your clients reframe some of that? Do you look into their individual diets as you're coaching them?
So what we do is we have quite a significant health intake, health questionnaire, and we look at things like sleep. So we have lifestyle questions. So how well someone is sleeping can actually, if somebody, let's say, isn't sleeping between certain hours of the morning, um, then that can be an indication that, oh, you have maybe something's up with your liver. If somebody isn't sleeping between, let's say, 10 p.m. and 1 a.m., they probably have a hard time losing fat because that's when growth hormone needs to work. So essentially, I look at it when it comes to sleep. I look at it like there's night shift workers and there's day shift workers. So your day shift workers are like your serotonin. It's supposed to like, perk you up, and you've got your dopamine, and they're working together to keep you motivated and keep you happy. And then you've got your natural melatonin that then starts to come in at night. And so then you've got all your day shift workers, but then you go to sleep. And so growth hormone, for example, those night shift workers come on and they start repairing muscle and tissue. They also help release fat. That's their main role, is actually helping to release fat from the body. So when people don't go to bed until really late, or they miss that window, chances are they will maybe eat later at night and they will have a hard time losing body fat. So we can actually correlate somebody's sleeping pattern to the symptom or the complaint that they have. And that's just one thing. We also do, um, I guess it's like it's a cognitive functioning questionnaire too. So we ask people about, ask certain questions that then can indicate, oh, okay, by the way they answered this question, this could indicate that they're not very calm. So they have a more stress in their life, which means perhaps they are lacking GABA, which is a neurotransmitter that helps the brain remain calm. So by the questions we ask, we can see, oh, they could be low on this, they could be low on this, and they could be low on this. And that also correlates to nutrition sometimes as well. Is um, somebody having sugar cravings? Is somebody skipping breakfast, or are they eating late at night, or what's happening? So it's really interesting how the more you learn about the gut and the more you learn about the brain and stress and sleep, you can start to really pinpoint where the problems are and where to start. It's fascinating. So it's quite lengthy, but I remember going through it myself, wondering like, why do I have to answer all these questions? But then the more I learned about the links, I was like, oh my God, this is fascinating stuff. So that's sort of the first thing that happens. But we do have a general protocol we start with people, and that is, so we'll go through the protocol, we'll identify somebody's sort of what we see are the top concerns. So it might be something like, okay, um, you're eating at this time, this is what's probably causing an insulin spike. So if somebody isn't sleeping well and they're eating right before bed, what are they eating? If they're eating something high in sugar, okay, well now you're not sleeping, and so now you're not getting growth hormones, so you're adding issues. So we might say, let's just change where you put this particular snack and move it over here, but also we think maybe this supplement might really help you. So we're an advocate of supplements when they make sense, but not when they don't make sense. So we'll look at that. And then from there, we put people through our big program, which is called Fem Fusion Foundations, where we do a step-by-step process of starting to remove certain foods that might be causing somebody issue. And we also help them sleep better. So it involves a lot of coaching elements. It's all about self-care. It's a lot about reflection, because we really need to make sure stress is the worst problem. Stress and sleep. If somebody is not sleeping well, number one, that's where it's everything else underneath it is not going to go as well. So we have to really nail down somebody's sleep and get them sleeping, at least these 8 hours if they can. So we have a whole sleep protocol. How do you do that? Because people are like, I don't know how I'm going to sleep better. Well, let us fix that for you.
Right.
So we get them sleeping better. And then we work them through, again, as I said, step by step pieces. Um, but it works because they start to understand that there's a science behind it. And we're really just teaching people to be their own private investigator. Here's what could be going on for you. So let's remove these foods. See how you feel. Do you feel any better over the course of 1 month, 2 months, 3 months? And then we can slowly start adding things back in one at a time and assess your tolerance level. So I I know my tolerance window when it comes to gluten. I can have a pizza, I can have, a cookie and maybe a croissant and maybe a bun, but that's it for the week. If I have too much of that, I will get stuffy, I will have headaches and sinus issues. So I started to really learn, oh, if I eat too much of this is what's causing that. So that's what we do is say, look, you don't have to do this, but it might be worth checking out. And then you can decide, oh, I don't feel good when I eat this. Oh, no, I feel okay when I eat this. And then you're good. But that's the entire process, Sean, is being your own private investigator to figure out how do you sleep optimally and what foods and what things are maybe making you feel not well. And then through that whole process, people just they lose weight, they feel better, they have more energy, and by the end of it they've got these lifestyle habits that they always wanted but didn't think they would ever do. This is what I always hear from people. I didn't think, and I was that person too. I was like, I'm not giving up gluten, I'm not giving up dairy, like that's stupid. Well, now that I realize how it makes me feel, that's different. If I have bounds of energy and I'm really happy and I'm going out to do things, well, how I feel is way more worth it than me having a latte every day and experiencing anxiety. You know what? I will forego that, because then they learn the difference. It's such a significant thing. You don't want to feel like shit. You want to keep feeling better. So that item that you didn't want to give up doesn't matter as much anymore. And not saying that everyone has to give it up either. Again, you'll find your window of like, oh, I can have this much. Some people can't have any dairy. Some people like me, I can still have a bit, but I know my limit.
Yeah, you get a lot of that. And like for me, I can eat sugar in the evening, but if I start my day with like, I'm really sensitive to it. I'm in Vietnam, they eat banh mi sandwiches. So you think, okay, that's just egg and vegetables. No, they put a chili sauce on it. and the chili sauce has sugar in it. If I start my day with that, then I want a sugary snack before lunch, and then I want one later, and then I want one later, and it's this domino effect. So yeah, like you're talking about, everyone has a different window of tolerance, and it's just about identifying each person's. You mentioned your program and the scope of what it does, but is this a set time program? Like we overhaul you over 10 weeks. Is it 6 months, or is it individualized to each person?
So it's structured as a 3 month program to get people started. And then after the 3 months, we then have an advanced program. And that's where we go. I love the advanced program. It's super fun. It goes more into, as I mentioned earlier about the brain function part. Um, One of the things I'm most proud about the program is that I go into motivation, and often people blame themselves because they don't have motivation to do something. Let's say they've been doing a workout program, they've been eating healthy, and they start to lose motivation and they fall off. Maybe they fall off for a week and it's a month and then it's longer, and then they start to gain weight back and they can't figure out why they were so motivated and now they're not. Like, how do I get back on it? And I love that what we teach is motivation is a human body system issue. It's not it's not the host, as in the person. It is not a human person's fault they can't be motivated. You have to understand how the dopamine, it's all related to dopamine, how the dopamine system actually works in a human body so that you can use it for your advantage. And by knowing this, my clients depersonalize. They are able to step away, stop blaming themselves because they realize, oh my gosh, it's not my fault. It's not that I don't have the willpower to do this. It's a whole systems thing. And then they know what to do, and then they don't have motivation issues the same way as they did before. It's amazing. So we do a deep dive into that, and then we go into more things about liver health and gallbladder health and what other symptoms you could be having, and how do we then support the liver, and why do we need to support the liver? Like, why, how do you even know if you have a liver issue? Because usually people think we're all healthy and fine unless the doctor's like, oh, you have fatty liver, oh, you have cholesterol issues. High cholesterol isn't necessarily a high cholesterol issue. It can be more often than not a liver issue. And it's not a big deal. There's things that you can do to fix it by having liver supportive foods. Like, it's not detrimental, but unless you're in a place where a doctor says, "Oh my God, this is bad," then they'll fix you. But what about all the in between? Like, just because you aren't at your worst doesn't mean you don't have a problem. So we do go into talking about that. So it's great, and then we get more in detail with fitness stuff. So our first 3 months isn't necessarily about working out. We do talk about movement and why it's important and the kind of movement, but really what people need in the beginning is fitness is sort of almost the last piece of the puzzle. And I know that sounds really weird coming from me as a personal trainer, but it's important. But um, what's more important is that we sort out your sleep and the internal workings of your nervous system and your gut health. And then we move toward, okay, let's talk fitness goals. If somebody's already working out, great, keep doing it. We don't go into the details of, okay, here's how much you should strength train and here's how much cardio you should do and what kind of cardio you should do. We don't go into that until the advanced program. And that part's really fun too, because fitness gets really confusing for people also. Like, how much do I do? And there's all these programs out there, like HIIT cardio is bad, running is bad. Okay, nothing is bad, but people don't understand the effect it has on which part of the body. And if you have specific issues, you may not want to do one. You might want to choose another instead. So, how do you choose and what do you choose?
Yeah, absolutely. I think like even in my own coaching program, talking about executive function and decision making ability, I have an entire section on sleep and what you're eating and why you're eating it and activity level. And it's very much so like values based from the neck up, but our entire body is a system, like you're talking about. And it's you can't make changes here if you're not making changes here. And for everybody, that looks a little bit different. So, what we're you spoke a little bit about motivation and how those are internal systems. And I know from our talk before that you have a three-part series on dopamine. Can you just give a short rundown on dopamine regulation and how to start taking action on some of that if somebody struggles with these things?
Okay. So dopamine is related to the reward center in the brain. And most people think of the reward center as where addiction issues come from. And they are, but anytime you're happy about something, anytime you're doing something you enjoy, you're actually in your reward center. That's where it all comes from. So when you're in your reward center, there's only so much. I'm gonna back up for a second. There's only so much available dopamine. It has to get replenished. So sometimes what happens is when people, I'll give this example. So let's say somebody, this happens to our clients, which is why we had to put in this section. Our clients have a weight goal and they have an energy goal, but mainly they want to lose weight, but they don't want to say it because they want energy first. But still, they're super happy when they lose weight. So they're super, super focused, right? They're going up, they've got this goal, they're like, yay. And they've reached their goal. And let's say they've reached it at the end of the first 3 months of our foundation program. They're feeling great, their photos are good, that's just to make their clothes fit. Then they get to a point where you're like, well, now what? That's when you now have a you're not releasing dopamine anymore. So what happens is you have a desire for something. Right then and there, your dopamine is now seeking that reward. So it's a seeker. It wants you to be happy. So it seeks this and you're motivated for it. So your dopamine is running. You're in a dopamine charged state. You're going for your goal. It could take you 3 months. It could be a different kind of goal, but in this respect, we're going to say, okay, it's taking you 3 months. You reach the weight loss. It's like now the door on your dopamine room is closed because it was open because you had a goal that you were excited about. But you've reached the goal, and now it's like it's closed. You don't have anything else to focus on because you've put all your focus into this one thing, which is great because you want to do that so you can stay focused and reach the goal. But this is the detriment. Now, what do you do? So then what happens is people start to spiral. They start to lose interest. They don't know what else to do. They're really happy, but they're not motivated to continue. So they start maybe deviating off their diet plan. Maybe they start skipping some workouts. They're not as happy as they used to be. Generally, what will happen is they'll go back to old patterns. But when they learn that all you did was close the door, all you need to do now is open the door. How do you open the door? The first thing is you need to start appreciating the little things again. The little things that make you happy, a cup of tea, music, a blanket, things that normally on a day to day we're not even paying attention to because we're busy. We got to get the kids to school and then we have to come home and clean the house and get groceries and then do our work. We're not taking time out to appreciate the sound of that bird that's out there. So you have to allow the little things to make you happy because what you did was you made a big thing make you happy. You lost weight, you look good, you feel amazing, you're looking in the mirror, everything's amazing. But there's nowhere to go from there because it was such a big goal. Now, what do? So you first acknowledge that This isn't a you problem. This isn't because you're failing. This is actually how the system works. All you did was close the door. Now you need to open it. Right. The second you can realize this isn't a you problem, you've depersonalized it, and now it just becomes a systems thing. So you follow the steps and you go, okay, I just need to reconnect with things that I enjoy. Oh, I'm going to have a hot bath with some candles. Oh, maybe I'll go out to, I don't know, some store and pick this up or pick that up. So first, the little things, um, and then looking for other, maybe smaller things that you want to tackle. So we do talk about the wheel of life. This is when it comes in really handy. So I get my clients to do the wheel of life and let's assess other areas of your life now. I mean, you've put all your energy into this one area. Where have we now been taking from? Because you can't just give to all areas and still have enough to give to every other area. It's impossible. You're letting something go. So now let's reconnect with other areas of your life that maybe you'd like to focus on. So we do that, and they're like, oh yeah, I haven't had fun lately. I haven't been going out with my friends. Or, oh yeah, I wanted to learn that new language, so I'm going to pick that up again. Oh, I want to reorganize my house or my closet. I hate my pantry's really cluttered. So we get them to look at other things that are going to make them happy. And then there's other steps that we do too. I think there's like 10 different things I get my clients to do. Not always in a particular order, but definitely starting with the ones that I mentioned first. And then from there, it just makes the biggest difference because they don't spiral into that dark hole. And then 3 months goes by and they're like, I don't know how to get out of this. So it's great. Does that make sense?
That absolutely makes sense. The message that really resonates from that is that action leads to motivation. It's not the other way around. And it's not always direct action. It might not be on the exact thing that you're working towards, but it's getting yourself to do things, getting yourself to move is how you create that internal motivation to get things done.
That's also a good point. So the other thing we tell people is that you have to be careful of layering. And what this means is if you are motivated to work out with getting your latte and you've got your playlist and you've got your phone where you're putting all your workouts in and you've got your favorite water bottle, whatever, all these little things make you happy. So, which means your dopamine is going off. It's like, ooh, I get my latte. Ooh, I get, this and that. And when you are in a low dopamine state, let's say you've come below your baseline. Everybody has a baseline of dopamine. So if you've come below your dopamine level and now you're in sort of a negative, that makes it sometimes you just have to know that you have to stay there because you have to give your body an opportunity to start to replenish it, which means you have to just accept that you're not going to be as super excited right now, which also means if you keep trying to layer things, it's not going to make you happy because it's like a drug. That's essentially what's happening. You use it too much, it's going to lose its luster. So now if you've lost your luster, you're like, oh, I want to go to the gym, but my latte isn't helping me. My playlist isn't making me motivated. You have to understand that now to wean yourself back a little bit and go do your exercises and just do your exercises. And again, this is part of looking for the little things to make you happy. Because when you can look for the little things, you don't need to have all these perfect things lined up for you to take action on something. So that's really important. And the other important thing when it comes to meal plans and workouts is the this is the same reason why we don't as humans generally stick to the same thing over and over because eventually it's a drug, whatever you're doing that's making you happy. So if you're on a meal plan and you're liking it, and this happened to me, I liked my meal plan, but after Christmas I was like, oh, I don't want to go back on this meal plan, which is weird because I liked it. Well, you get tired of shit. You get tired, things get old, you have to change things up. So if you have this belief, which a lot of people do, they believe that, well, I'm supposed to stick to my 5 day workout plan, doing this exercise and this meal plan. It's impossible to stick to it forever because that is absolutely not how your system works. It's going to get old. And if you know it's going to get old, you can prepare for it and change things up.
Absolutely. The variety is the spice of life. And if you have these things that help you get going once in a while, they'll help you get going once in a while, but you can't be reliant on them every single day. It's about building sustainable systems. Was it atomic habits? We don't rise to the height of our goals, but we fall to the height of our systems. If your systems are built poorly, you're not going to have that direction. So, if a person were starting to get into coaching and wanted to help people with something similar, what would steps be that they could take to start getting into this kind of health coaching?
Oh, that's a really good question. Um, well, like when it comes to health coaching, there's lots of places where you can learn about health coaching. But I think the first thing I would say is asking themselves, what about health are you super passionate about? And then see where your existing skills um, can help with that. Because like if you're a person, it all comes down to like a personal story too, right? Like what is it about health that is really important to you? It's not easy to weave it in, I'll tell you that much. It wasn't easy for me to weave in coaching to personal training. It took a very long time. It's very frustrating. um, because people aren't always, especially with fitness, people are hiring a personal trainer to hire a personal trainer. They're they're not prepared for somebody to be asking them a bunch of questions about their life purpose. So I think that one's really important is to know, okay, if you're trying to go down the avenue of health, what are people actually searching for? And how are you going to communicate that there's more? And sometimes you have to be really, really sneaky about it. And that's what I had to do. I had to slowly sneak in certain questions without asking too many questions that made it feel like I thought I was here for a workout session. Does that make sense? You have to be a little bit careful when you're weaving these things together. I think more people are understanding a little bit more about health coaching now, but health coaching is so broad. I don't really even know what a health coach is. Like, I have no idea because there's wellness coaches, there's fitness and nutrition coaches, which I guess I probably fall into that category. But then again, there's so much more because it's so much about mindset. So you ask a really difficult question, actually. I don't think I really gave an answer.
It is a really, it's difficult because it's a broad scope, but it is a specific target for you as a person, right? Dating back further into my story, as I was getting ready for my career change, one of the things I was looking at was getting into health coaching and an entirely different direction from you. Um, there was a clinic that I visit that has doctors, chiropractors, massage therapists, like infusion health, and multiple other things. And they're specifically looking for a specific like certification of health coach to come in for their health coaches to you go in, you see the doctor, and then you sit down with the health coach and translate some of what the doctor said into practical everyday practices for this person. So you're right, there are what you do compared to what someone else will do is entirely different. But that's the power of it, right? We're all looking for the value within. And how can I make my story unique and how can I help other people through that? And it sounds like you've done an excellent job of doing your own thing of personal training and whole life wellness and putting the two together in a way that's unique to you.
Yeah, thank you. That part, I feel very comfortable with how I've blended it now. I think when people start to do the questionnaire, that's an indicator of what it's going to be like. So I think that's probably the first thing. One of the things I would say is really important that if you're going to coach people and you've gone through a life coaching program, is like dripping in, not the whole, like, I don't do my traditional life coaching questionnaire because that's not what my clients need. So you have to blend the topic of what they're trying to achieve with their health with a sprinkle of whatever life coaching questions you think are most relevant. I think the wheel of life is always a good one that lets them know what kind of coach you are. That one's great because it tells them that, oh, we're looking at my whole life, which you have to be. And it's going to weed people out pretty quick too, which I love. Like, somebody isn't willing to do the wheel of life or they think it's dumb, then this isn't the client for me. But that's a good one to sneak in. So, but it's hard. I think marketing is where it gets difficult too when it comes to blending coaching with another niche. So right now I'm actually working on taking a marketing course for email marketing. So I encourage people who are coaches to seek out, help from maybe other coaches or look for courses to help them do the harder stuff. Because definitely for me, the hardest has been how do I communicate what I do in like 30 seconds? Like, come on, that's been the hardest. Like, I'm a life coach. We do 45 to 60-minute sessions. How am I supposed to whittle that down into one post?
Yeah.
Like, or a 30-second video. Like, I can't do that. So, anyway, that's always a challenge, but it's a work in progress. So, it just takes a lot of creativity.
So, is there anything else that you want to leave off for aspiring coaches that are looking to get started? What would you tell them to do for an action today?
So these are these are already coaches and they have an idea, like a niche that they want to go after, or they're not sure on their niche.
Both.
Hmm. Well, I think you have to remember to go with what you're passionate about, even if you're like, how the hell am I going to be a coach for that? That doesn't even make sense. You'll make it make sense. But if you're passionate about it and it's what aligns with you, trust your intuition and trust that you have to trust that inner being, even if it doesn't make sense right now. At the time, as I said, like blending personal training and life coaching was foreign. Nobody was doing that because that was like, I don't know, 12 years ago when I started doing that. I think it's more common now, but I knew that that's what I needed to do. So I don't think I know. I know that if you have a passion and you're like, I don't know how the hell to do it, run with it because it's what you're supposed to do in your own creative way and it will work. You just have to believe it. So don't drop it and go a different route just because it's more common. Stay with it. Stay with it.
Incredible. Thanks so much for coming on and talking to me today, Heather. I really appreciated this, and I got some great takeaways from today's conversation. If people want to connect with you, how do they do that?
I would say we'll probably just put my email at the bottom of this podcast, and that's going to be I'm revamping everything with my business partner. So um, the email is going to be the best way, and you can just say podcast if you want me to reach out to your podcast. What I do is I have a newsletter that goes out. We talk a lot about symptoms that people are having. We target more of the 35 to in their 50s for women who are really trying to figure out, is this hormones, is this age, like what do I do? So if you're in that position and you want to learn more about it, you can just email me and say, newsletter, and I will just add you to the newsletter, and then you can start receiving stuff. If you have actual questions for me, then absolutely just reach out and say hi, that you listen to the podcast and you want to chat, and we can go from there.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Heather, and we'll catch up with you again soon, okay?
Cool. Thanks, Sean.